All right, everyone. Welcome back to discussing the book Outstanding User Interfaces for Shiny. And today we are going to discuss chapter 6, which is about CSS for Shiny. This is a pretty long chapter, so we are dividing into two parts. We'll cover most of it today, and we'll leave the section CSS in action for the next week. If we have less time, maybe even before that, we need to wrap up the chapter. So for Shiny, the CSS language is really important because there's some default CSS, but we want to make changes to the colors, to the fonts, to the look of the app overall. And to make those changes, we need to use the CSS uh, language or whatever it is called. The CSS acronym is Cascading Style Sheets, and it's used to control the look of your web page. Shiny is a web page, as we discussed previously, and it does use some CSS, but we can make a lot of changes to it. So here's a quick example of a small Shiny app, not a Shiny app, a web page, which contains a single paragraph here. Uh, uh, right here. This is a paragraph within the body tag of the HTML page. Here's another paragraph, and then here's a div below it. And to change the color of the first paragraph, we provide style equals color red, which we can also specify here within the style attribute or style tag on the HTML page. Now, in the Shiny app, there are three ways that we can specify CSS. Before we look into those three ways, there is this general discussion on how a CSS property is controlled. So for a given tag, for example, the paragraph tag, we provide the tag name and we provide property and value for that tag. For instance, above we have a paragraph tag where we provide color red. Color is the property, red is the value. So here are the three ways that we can control how to include a CSS, one or more properties about tags for our Shiny app. Let's look at it in our studio. So I have this single Shiny app, and I'm going to first run it without changing any of the default CSS. So this is what the app should look like, where we have a heading and then a paragraph. Now let's change one thing to include CSS, which is right here. So we are providing a link to the style.css. Now, since this is a Shiny app, we need to provide the style.css within the www folder. And we do that here. Don't worry about the other files for now. Just focus on style.css. And let's see what style.css looks like. It contains the paragraph selector. Within CSS, the tag is referred to as selector because we are targeting the paragraph tag, and we use the selector P here to change its property. The property that we change is color, and we provide the value here as red. So we do that, and um, here is our tag, which say this is a paragraph, and let's run this to see what happens. So now we see that for the paragraph tag, the color changed to red, and if we add more paragraphs, all of them will have color red. Now let's see another way. This way to include CSS is called as external because we have an external CSS file which we link to using the link tag. Not the tag, link is coming from the tags object within Shiny. The second is to use internal way to include CSS, where within the head element of the Shiny app, we include the style, and within the style function, we provide the CSS property. This is internal because this does not require to have a separate file. So we do that here, and we make sure that we're not linking to the external sheet. And just to be sure, I'm going to restart R and then run this app. And now, just to show the difference, I change this to color purple, and we see that it's happening in the app. The third way to include CSS is to directly change the CSS of the paragraph that we want. So for now, I'm going to keep this tag as is. The paragraph function will contain this is a paragraph. And in here, I'm adding another paragraph. And here I'm providing the inline CSS where I say color should be dark green using the style argument within the paragraph function. So saving it and running it, we now have the first paragraph where it does not change the color because no inline CSS is applied and no external CSS is applied. But for this second paragraph, we do have a different color. There's a fourth way that is talked about here. It says the best way in Shiny to create a dependency and attach it to a tag is to create this HTML dependency. And then within the tag list, we provide the tag and we provide the dependency. Just to quickly review what a tag is in within the Shiny app when you're using the HTML tools or the functions that are exported from HTML tools to Shiny. For example, the P tag, we have this function P, which contains the text and that produces this tag. So this thing is a tag, and this thing is generating that tag. So to include any dependency and apply that to the tag, we need to provide the tag and we need to provide the dependency. Now, dependency is built using HTML dependency as we briefly looked at it in the previous chapters. And using the HTML dependency function, we need to provide the name, the version, the source to where the CSS file is, and the style sheet. To demonstrate that, I created this CSS file, which is essentially going to change the font of whatever tag I want to apply this to. And I downloaded this font from Google Fonts. And then within the www folder, I put there are two files, but here I'm only using a single one. This one, which is the extra bold true type font. So this is the CSS syntax to do that. Add font face is going to download the font and provide it as a static file as the www folder does in Shiny. So with font family, here I provide the name that I want to use in Shiny app, and this is the actual file name that is shown here as well. So by providing this CSS property and naming this file as parkinsons.css, I can now use it. So I'm gonna hide this one and open this one here. So here we have the Parkinson's dependency, just like the chapter. I'm using the HTML dependency function and I'm wrapping it inside a function. So here we have that function where we have HTML dependency, give it a name, provide a version number. And in this case, we are telling it that the source is www and the style sheet is parkinsons.css, which we created here. And it's in the www folder. And right here within tag list, we need the tag. So I use the paragraph function to create the tag. And we also provide the Parkinson's dependency here. Now let's run this. And now we see that this third paragraph is bold because I used the bold font. A few things to note here. First, in the in the chapter here, it uses www/style.css, but this is not correct. If we use this, then Shiny doesn't recognize the path to the CSS file. Shiny automatically understands that we should have a www folder that contains all the static um, assets. So we don't need to say www/style. We can just directly provide the name of the style.css while we're using the link function here. And here too, in the fourth option, uh, when we provide tag list, we cannot just provide CSS dependency as a function. We need to run this function. So we need the output of the function, not the function itself. That's why at the end here, I provide parentheses. I was also not sure while trying this, how should I provide the tag? So when you provide the tag, uh, you cannot just say P and then third paragraph. You have to provide the style here as well. Then it will understand that we want to make a change to the font, because here I'm saying font-family, which is another CSS property, and with the value Parkinson's. So using this, we just saw that the font was changed. So this is, according to the chapter, this is something that we can apply to a given tag list or a given tag, or a combination of tags that we can generate, as we learned before. So this could be useful in that case. In my personal opinion, I think creating a single CSS file and then making changes to it, adding and everything to it, and then linking to it seems to be the best way, and also the easiest way to work with any changes. And that's also what the chapter says at the beginning. But slightly confusing thing is that here it also says this is the best way. So I was not sure what it means, which one is the best, the external one
Mhm.
or this one.
Well, I think that this is the using the external file is perfect if you want to use your own style. Like, okay, I'm writing this by hand, but you want, for example, import another uh, web framework for CSS framework, then you use the dependency HTML. It's like, okay, you want to import a lot of classes, but even though tag list seems to apply, it doesn't apply really anything to the specific tag you are grabbing. It just like send a message to place the dependency in the header. So there is no relationship between, what they does,
Mhm.
unless you are using a class from that dependency. And that's
Yes,
why you
yeah.
were pointing out, okay, you will use this format for the letters,
Mhm.
and you were
Makes
using the
sense.
dependency that you already imported.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that that's the use case. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
writing myself. I want to make changes. Then I use the style sheet as you were doing it. Perfect. The implementation. Hey, you can share that code in the book club, examples. Please do it, because it's a really good example for making understanding when to use the WW. Because it's not as easy, to know when is understanding that you are already in the WW, or you need to specify it. So
Yeah,
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 great.
I'll share that. Sure. Um, Yeah, and also did what you just said. It reminds me that I once had a problem when I was deploying the Shiny app, and when I was using select as input, and with select as input, for some reason, because select as input is based on a JS, it's a JS library, so it doesn't work sometimes because JavaScript was somehow not included. So I had to use HTML dependency, and then within it, I just simply typed select as input. That's it, and it worked. So that means that sometimes in a deployed version, for some reason, that may be dependent on where we are deploying it, if you don't get everything packaged with the Shiny app. So you have to sometimes specify that using HTML dependency. So as you mentioned, for external resources where someone has created a library like a CSS or a JavaScript library, and we want to use that, for that HTML dependency function could be useful. Um, Next section is about CSS selector. So there are multiple basics here that tell us how to provide um, uh, or apply the CSS to multiple elements at the same time. So let's look at the first example here. So this one is providing the red color to everything in the paragraph and the uh, div tags. So let's see. All right. So here we are, and on this one, here we see both are red because we have provided that using the style option. This is the second option, internal way to provide CSS. Another is to select by class or ID. So we not only want to apply that red color, but we want to apply it to only a specific paragraph tag. So if you want to do that, in this next example, we have two paragraphs. The first one has a class that we specified, first P, and first P is defined right here. It should have a color red. And the second paragraph does not have any classes, which means it will just use the auto color, which by default is black. The div function has a element as ID. So instead of a class, we are specifying an ID, which we know all Shiny inputs and outputs have an ID. So we can specify that by ourselves, or whenever we are creating an input object or output object, we need to provide ID, as we know. So once we provide that, we can also make changes to the element. So we can make changes either by class or by the ID. So if we do that here, we now see that the second paragraph is not changed, but the first one does have a different color. Similarly, the div also have the red color. All right. Next is apply CSS to single elements. In this case, we want to apply this to a span element, which is right here. So we have a full paragraph which says hello world, what's up, and we only want to apply that red color or any changes to this word world. To do that in HTML, this is how we do that using the span tag, and we can provide a custom class. If we do that within Shiny, here we are. So we create a paragraph tag. Within the paragraph tag, we separated the hello world and what's up parts into three sections. After hello, I put a comma. Then within the span function, I provide world and provide the class custom. Class custom is defined right here using internal CSS, and then the last part. And once we run that, now we see that the span part has the class applied, but the others are not. Next, advanced selectors. So data toggle is one of the attributes of the A tag, which is the anchor tag, which provides links in an HTML page. And so if we want to make changes to only those anchor tags which have something like this, we can do that. First, we have an example with selecting nested tags. So in this case, here's a simple example where we have a list element, which in HTML is specified using li. So this could be part of unordered list or an ordered list. And in this case, there is an a tag, which is inside this element. But there's also an a tag, which is outside. In both cases, they have the same classes because we want to apply some property to both of them, but we only want to make a change to this tag, which is inside the list element. So in order to do that, we need to specify the parent object or the parent tag, and then the child tag. And then we can apply the property that we want to apply. So if we look at that example, advanced selectors. So here's the first attempt where we are using navbar page. So let me first show you what that looks like. Let's run this, and I'm going to open that in here. Um, do you see the app on in the browser? Okay, so let's right click here, and we are looking at the inspector tools. And I'm gonna zoom in here. Not gonna zoom in, but we can see, let me first close this and show what I mean. So we can see that this is a navigation bar at the top, and it has three sections: plot, summary, and table. Within the plot section or plot tab, we have three more tabs. Now, what we actually wanted to do was apply the font weight or make bold these three sections. We did not want to apply that to these three. But let's first see the CSS, sorry, not the CSS, the HTML structure of this page to understand where can we make changes to the CSS so that we only have these three bold, but these three are not. So in essence, what we need is this thing. So these three are bold, but for these three tabs, we don't want them to be bold. All right, so a little bit. So looking at the body part of the app, and we first see the page nav bar. Since the book was written, BSLib has mostly taken over the layout, BSLib package and R. And so we see this BSLib page nav bar, but that's not what we see in the chapter. But we can safely ignore it for now. And then we see nav bar default, so it highlights the navigation bar. Let's look into this. And then we first see the container fluid. Within that, we see navbar header. And then we see the navbar, nav, and then nav underline. So this is where we have these three elements. And you can see that this is an unordered list. If I open that, now we see the three list elements: plot, summary, and table. This is the active one. So if I open this, here we see that we have the plot part. And this is an anchor tag. So the example that was discussed before, that was discussed in the in here. Um, here. So that was discussed in context of this problem, that we have an anchor tag inside list and we want to make change only to part of it. So if we apply this, which we did in this case, it didn't really apply it to only these three, it applied it to everything, which means that all the children or all the tags inside the list elements will be will have the CSS property changed because we have multiple anchor tags below the list element. If we switch back to the HTML page, this is the first time that we see that within the list elements. But if we now get into the plot tab, within the plot tab, we also have tab content. We open that, and here we see the tab pane active. Open that, and then we have, let's see, the data table one. Yeah. Here we have nav tabs. This is another unordered list, which also has list elements. So since we have list elements here in the navigation bar, and we also have list elements here under the plot tab, uh, for all list elements, wherever we have an anchor tag, the CSS will be applied to that. That's why this was applied to everything. We did not want that. We only want to make changes to the anchor tag in the list elements of the navigation bar. So let's do that here and run this. And now we have successfully uh, avoided making these bold. So let's see first, what were the properties that we were changing? So the properties that we were changing was font size and font weight. The font size is increased, that's why these have bigger font size than these, and font weight is bold. Second thing is going back to uh, this HTML page, we know that for the tab set panel, and let me quickly go back just to show the difference. So we have navbar page, which has the first tab panel, the second tab panel, and the third tab panel. Within this first tab panel, which is for the plot object, we have a tab set panel. The classes for the navbar page and for the tab set panel are different. So the class here for the navbar page is navbar nav, and class for the tab set panel is um, nav tabs. So that's mentioned um, right here. So navbar nav is for navbar page, and nav tabs is for tab set panel. So in our app, what we did is we were more specific. We still use LINA, but before that we say navbar nav because this is relevant to the navbar page. If I
Yeah,
change this,
yeah. It seems like the listed in a tab are related to the tab panel function. Like we are using that function many times, you will see the same pattern. So because at the end, the UI function just render HTML for us.
yeah, um, and just to show that change, if I change this to nav dash tabs, we should see these to be bold and these should be the default. Let's see. And yes, indeed, that's what happens. And going back, I did have one question here. The actual class that we see here is nav. So we have a class, a separate class here before nav tabs. How do we know that we should say just navbar dash nav? Why not dot nav and dot navbar dash nav? Because there are two classes.
You could select both, but you don't need to. Like, you are sure that this class is not present in the other element, and you make the distinction, just pointing one of two is enough. You don't need to point all the classes because you might have some elements that have maybe 3, 4, 5 classes, and you don't need to specify all of them. And that's the point. I think that the less you write, the better. You can get to the result just applying less classes. Then you, for example, I don't know, maybe you want to use the nav class in other case, but you don't want this effect in those cases, you know. So
But
you
if you
try,
do want
you,
to
you
apply it, if you do want to apply it, how would we apply it? If I try, for example, dot nav and a,
space, and that should work I think. Let's
let's
try it.
see. It's not line,
And but
yes.
do you have the above code, for example, because you run the whole script, or you just have this? Try to highlight better the code, because I don't know you are running the second attempt or the first attempt.
This is the second attempt. This is for the nav bar. Oh no.
No, because I know you commented the code above that.
Oh yeah, this is
Okay, it's
commented.
commented. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so let me run this correct code first. So this is
Okay.
what we get.
Mm-hmm.
And if I change that to .nav and then try it again, now it doesn't
It
do the
doesn't.
same thing. Yeah.
Mm, if you just keep nap, it should apply to both.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh,
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
happens? Remember that a space is condition, but you don't want to exclude like you are expecting to have a class with not and then another tag with not bar
Mhm.
and then another tag with list and the a. So the point is like you are asking, you have not point not, you are asking for another tag to have not, and inside that tag have the night.
Yeah.
That's I think that the penny said that doesn't exist. If we want to select um
Maybe it should be
the
like
comma
this. Yeah. Yeah,
is
because you're right, because
O.
these are two classes. Yeah, we are not applying it correctly, but I got the point. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
but maybe I don't know is the we will see it like a more than.
yeah.
I don't know if that symbol will solve the problem. Like you have nap and then we have more than. I don't know if that will apply the
I
thing.
think because these are two, yeah, I
Mm,
think because these are two different classes, we cannot directly, we can do that with tags, but not with classes. I think it's
no, because it's the class. I think that if class they expect to have another tag related to that class. Like
mm,
you have another tab that you are asking for a step before. So yeah, it won't work.
yeah, for now, we can move on. We'll think about it later. Okay, next, selecting by attribute. So there are three examples here of data toggle attribute within the anchor tag. One is dropdown, then my dropdown, whatever. And so if we provide data toggle attribute with anchor tag in the CSS using this notation with square brackets and provide color red. So for all of these, it will then apply red color to the words tag in all three cases. If we only want to make change to the drop down uh, value, data total equals drop down, then we need to provide that this way, and then it will make change only to the first anchor tag. And here we could be less specific as well. So we can say data toggle star equals drop down. And in this case, it will be less specific because the star checks whether the word drop down is there, but not the position. So it could be at any position, but it just checks that what is if the word drop down exists or not. Other selectors, for example, direct descendants. So using the same app as before, we're now going to see the example of direct descendants. Let's first look at the app. So in this case, we have two sections, plot and more. For the more, we have these two, but we only want to make changes to the top one. We don't want to make changes to these. We don't want to make these bold and bigger in text. This was our first attempt where we tried to make that change using navbar nav lina as we were doing before here. So we applied the same thing, but the issue here is that we have uh, two uh, two descendants of more, and we don't want to apply that to all two of them. So now if I comment this out and run the second version, now we see that only the navigation list elements are changed and not the other one. Let's see what's the difference from before. The difference is that we are using the class nav or nav when now we are more specific and we are saying go to the direct descendant and not to the other descendants, only the direct descendants. So the direct descendants for the nav or nav are only these two. These other two are not direct descendants. These would be called as grandchildren, but we don't want to apply the change to grandchildren, only to the children, which are the direct descendants. All right. So we discussed these two examples. Next is we can use pseudo classes to make changes to things like active. So if the anchor tag is active, what to do in that case. If the button is disabled, then what CSS properties should be applied. If the checkbox is checked, then what happens? So in each case, we can override the defaults and make changes to that. So let's take a look at the example for that. So let's first see what that looks like. So in this case, we have the plot, which is the very first anchor tag in this navigation bar. That is bold, but the second one is not. Similarly, its descendants are not. So how do we make that change? Again, we specify nav or nav class for navigation bar. Within that, we have the list element. So notice the same notation we are using for direct child. And then we say first child with colon. Colon indicates this is a pseudo class. And then for this very first child, we make changes to the anchor tag and nothing else. So none of the other children are affected. Similar to pseudo classes, there are also pseudo elements. And with pseudo elements, we can make changes to what happens before and after any tag we are making changes to. In this example, we are looking at anchor tags. So again, we will use the same example. This is for pseudo elements. And let's first look at the app. So in this case, we have the word plot, and it has an emoji before it. So here's how that works. First, we have the same exact CSS which we had before. So we have nav bar nav, first child, that's why this one is bold and the others are not. Now, the second CSS property that we see here is again targeting the same object, the same element, first child, but this time we are using a pseudo element called before, and we are saying that before this, add this content. And here I commented out this, but if I include it and I say after the first child, which is plot, include this emoji. So if we run that, now we have this. So this way we can add or remove contents uh, uh, from within, from before and after a certain element. Now, there's some discussion about best practices. Uh, the first section here is DRY principle, which stands for don't repeat yourself. This means that we should try to use uh, as less code as we can. We don't need to repeat ourselves. In this example, there are two classes which have similar overlapping properties. Here, the only change that we see are to padding. The font size, border radius, color are identical. So we should not repeat that because it's error prone. We may forget to make changes to the other classes. So we can make generic and specific classes. So those two are converted to this, where we have a generic class with common color and border radius. Then there are two specific classes. For the first one, we have a padding of 10 and 16 and a font size of 18. For the second one, we have different padding and different font size. And now if we want, we can use that in our app. So here's an example where I have two divs. The first one says my element one, then my element two. And the way we apply these classes are to first provide the general class and then provide the specific class. So generic class, as we saw before, has two properties changed, color and border radius. And for specific one, we have this padding and font size. For specific two, padding and font size are different. Now let's run this and we see that they are applied, but we have less amount of repetition. Actually, we don't have any repetition at all. We have separated the classes so that we do not repeat ourselves. Next is selector specificity, where the question is if we are targeting the same thing by using different approaches, which one will actually be used? So in this example, we have a div which has an ID called element, a class called my class, and we know that it's part of a div tag. And we have CSS properties for all three. So we have the color red applied to the element ID, color blue applied to my class, and color green applied to the div object. So which one will be applied? In this case, there are some rules that CSS uses. The reason why it has the name cascading style sheets is because there are some cascading rules that apply to different elements. The first thing is that inline style is the most specific. So if we provide the style directly to a object or a tag, then that will be the most preferred. ID is applies to unique objects. So if we target ID, that will be applied. Class, pseudo classes, attributes go after that, and then elements and pseudo elements go at the end. So in this case, we have two classes. Actually, in the previous case, the one that is for element color red, this will be applied because we have provided the ID. If we didn't have ID, then class will be applied. The CSS property to the class will be applied. And here's another example where we have two classes for the same div, and one has a color blue and one has a color red. In this case, there is no specificity directly, so the second class will be applied because it appears after the first class in here. It doesn't matter where it appears within the CSS, but within the tag object, it appears second. That's why class 2 will be applied. If we put class 1 after class 2, then class 1 will be applied.
I would say that that's under the style sheet, not in the class label, right? You need to change it in the style sheet to make that to see the difference. I also know that if you name twice the same class in your style sheet, it will take the format of the last one. It's like like saving again a variable in R.
Good to know. Um, Next section is about block element modification. So this is a particular methodology. I did not completely understand it. I think this refers to the naming methodology like shown here. So here is block element modifier. So they're using underscore after block, and after element they're using dash dash. So I think these are just naming schemes just so that we understand how we are making changes, and later there's an example of it. Um, so an element is part of the block. Uh, Actually, this is important. A block is a standalone entity having a self-explanatory name like header or checkbox. Within the box, element is part of it, but it's not standalone like menu items. And a modifier indicates a specific state of an element. For instance, if a button is disabled or active and so on. So I think this, with using this naming scheme, it becomes quite clear of how we are making the changes and to what we are making that change. There's an example later. So here we see uh, modification of CSS with HTML inspector. So let's try to follow these steps. We have the following app. This is 641 here, and let's restart it. So it's a simple app. We only have a paragraph tag. Here the color red is applied to it. If I run it and then open it in the browser tab, and then look at the inspector tools. Here it says right click the P element and open the inspector in the styles tab. Notice the element or style section. So let's do that. So we have the elements.style selection. I'm in Chrome. So this is what it looks like for the inspector tools. And here we have element style. And we can make changes while we are looking at the live app. So it says to make a change like this, border style dashed and border color. So let's do that. Border style, border dash style, dashed. So right away we see that change. And then the second one here is border dash color. And give it a color like aqua. So we see that changes as well. Then there is the section to view the local changes, all the changes that we've made. So in this screenshot, they show that just like a div in Git or GitHub, we can see the changes that we have made while we were making changes to the element style. I could not find this. I tried using, so in the instruction it says to look at the sources. And I tried looking at, um, I think the name was, we have local modifications. Once down top right corner of the property box, there's open the sources tab, file name, local modifications. So if I try to look at changes, show changes, I see no changes here, although I have made these changes. So I'm not sure what I'm missing
Maybe
here.
you will need to reapply them just after loading that. Try to apply another the color, for example. Try to change the color to red. The, I don't know. Yeah. Let's see now dates. No.
It still doesn't show up.
Mm,
Maybe there's an update in Chrome. I'm not sure how to show this. Looking at the screenshot, it says here changes, and so
yeah.
I'm
But
not
it's
sure.
selecting the index, Maybe you need to select some file because
If
it's
I'm
like
selecting
I see.
this
Mm, go to the HTML. It's like in the below part, you have like HTML. Okay, that's
here,
the
it
whole
just jumps.
document.
Yeah.
And sources, you click over sources.
Here,
Yeah, try to pick. Um, yeah, it doesn't look like he's really picking. I
maybe,
don't. Yeah.
yeah, maybe I have to make those changes. Um, if I refresh it, and no, not that. refresh this page and then add it. Go there, dash style dashed. Nope, still doesn't work.
No, it's like I don't know how they are pointing, to the file because they say that they are pointing to the index.
Yeah, it says here, once done, press enter and click on the file name. So I'm not sure. When I'm
File
making,
name,
I press enter and then file name. What file?
file name. What is the file name? It should be in the sources.
Yeah, I looked at it. Here we have, so this will
Double
be
click.
the, um,
Mm,
not very clear which file.
which file we are watching? Even though I don't like they have the dependencies source. Yeah, it's like the peak. Mm, no, we don't. We need to. We need help to make that because I don't know either.
Yeah, I looked up for this, but I couldn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think for now, I should wrap up. Let me see if there's anything here. 6.5.2 is yeah, it's later in the chapter. So I think we can leave the CSS in action section for the next week. And I think this could probably be covered. I know there's a detail on animation and layout. These two may take a little longer. Um,
Yeah.
so, but let's try to read at least part of the next chapter, and if we have time, we can include that. If not, then only this section I'll
I
cover.
think we are going to. I think it's enough the material just for a class. Yes, because like you click over see Cascade Sheet in action. It's like half of the bar, that you have in the right.
Yeah,
It's like in the middle.
yeah, there's a lot.
I don't know how they managed to make a long chapter, but it was a really good one. It was really interesting. All they show basically how to apply what we learn about dependencies in Ledger because now we are applying. It'll be like, okay, we can use the tasks that we already established. We are understanding the importance of learning the structure of our UI. You understand the tasks that you have, then you can change them.
Definitely, yeah. And I was also trying, I couldn't get enough time to do that, but the navbar page examples that are used here, these are now, according to Shiny's own documentation, now they recommend using VSLib. So they say instead of using navbar page, use page underscore navbar. But that changes the CSS even more. So to target something below it is even more challenging. But now we at least know how to get into that particular anchor tag and then make those changes. So we can probably handle the other one too.
Yes, of course. It's just about what is really useful to me by reading this chapter was just printing the CSS. Just even knowing the web inspector because you need to click over, and read what you're looking for. But you just get the text in with the indentation that it gives you. That help me let me to understand a little bit better.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, printing HTML is something important when we are editing Shiny apps.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap up for today. And next week we are going to continue discussing this chapter.
Yeah, perfect.